So this is the third podcast of the Brahma 3-1 Nation. I'm not quite sure when we can stop numbering the podcast. We can just say it's the podcast, but this is the third podcast. Today we're interviewing Chad Cole, a 3-1 veteran from the Gulf War era. And he was a fellow Lima company like Russell and me. So I'm very excited to talk to him today. But with us, why don't you guys introduce yourself? We have our VP.
Hey, I'm Josh Mendoza. Good to be here, guys.
Board of Directors, Chad Russell.
We like to call him the boss, the boss, the man in charge. And then Chad, why don't you introduce yourself, man? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, my name's Chad Cole. I appreciate you inviting me to do this. I wasn't expecting to get thrown to the lines to do this, especially in the early phases of the podcast. I'd rather you guys get it really good and then bring on some of the. There are so many other people you could get plugged into this. I was trying to flip my camera around so you could see my logo's backwards. I feel out of uniform, but so yeah, I joined the Marines in 1990, right out of high school, and was on the buddy system with the guy, and he stayed in and he did 20 actually, was in Iraq. He was a staff NCO when he finally retired, and he made it out of there all right. But he lives in Austin now. But had a guaranteed infantry contract. Back then they had just stopped doing the contract corporal stuff. You've probably heard of those. Mm-hmm. Those contracts that guys got their balls busted if you were like a contract corporal. I was not a contract corporal. I was a contract lance corporal. You got a PFC out of boot camp, and then like before you finished school, unless you were a shithead, they would pin lance corporal on you. And so my first duty station, I won't turn this into a diary, but we were graduating. We were graduating SOI, and the ground war, Desert Storm ground war, had already ended. It started when we were we're just kind of checking in at MCT back in the day. The 03s had to go through MCT and SOI. I don't know if y'all knew that or.
Nope, I didn't know that.
And so, yeah, so you got out of boot camp, and you did your 10-day boot leave, and then you'd check back in at San Onofre. This is for everybody. All the guys would check in at San Onofre.
Every swinging dick.
And if you we got fucked actually. I got stuck on mess duty for 3 weeks. That was one of the longest little 3-week stretches. A bunch of us got stuck on mess duty. Some of them would get stuck on guard duty and all that, but God, mess duty was horrible. We were on the mid shift, and they played a lot of games with us, and didn't get much sleep. All this just playing with boots kind of shit. And then, and that was when the ground war, Desert Storm ground war, started and ended just like that. So check out or finish at MCT, go straight into SOI, finish SOI, and then went to. There were like half a dozen of us that they sent to be with the first service support group. I think that unit's got a different name now, like a FSB or whatever the large support unit that falls under the MEF. I forget. I know it has a different name now. It used to be called the First Force Service Support Group, FSSG. And all the trucks and all that shit. So, but they sent about half a dozen of us over there to be a part of an I&I staff, a combat training staff.
Yeah. Where
they bring the Marines through and do their BST training and all that, And so I'm a boot lance corporal right out of school, thrown to the Lions to be part of an instructor staff. A lot of it was go for work and working parties, ammo runs and stuff like that. But I kind of had proved myself just to be just enough of squared away to get a chance to help teach some of the classes and stuff like that, and spent a lot of time worked with the heavy machine gun package there. I had delusions of, when I get to the grunts, I'm going to get to go be in weapons company. No, I'm an 0311, but I had a hard-on for the machine guns when I was a boot, and I really loved the 50 cal and all that shit, and taught. And back in the day, this is more trivia stuff, but back in the day, it was still authorized to where you could take apart the cover to the 50 cal and all those pieces. Used to have to know how to do that. And then they changed it to where, that was unauthorized maintenance, I know you know what am I using language that we still use, like.
Yes.
You're right there, man. You're right there.
You cannot break that weapon down any more than you just did. But back then, you could take all that shit apart, and you had to learn how to, put it back together and all that. And I really love the 50. When I checked into 3-1, he's just a corporal, and he was an 03 on a FAP in there anyway. He's just fucking skating, on the typewriter, and he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, man, stick me in weapons company if you can. And he looked at me, he's like, dude, can't do it, man. Can't do it, bro. I'd send you to, he's like, can you swim? And I'm like, I'm just, S3, whatever. Because I had only taken the swim qual. Well, I've ended up being WSQ and doing all that shit. But he was going to try to stick me in India. And India's still the boat company, right?
I think I may be wrong, but I think they switched some of it around.
They did, but it was when we were there.
It wasn't we were there, yeah. But I think
they shouldn't be changing things like that. But yeah, so they sent me to Lima Company, and then rest is history after that. That was an interesting run.
All right, good introduction right there.
So what came next, real quick? So I know you've done quite a bit. There's a book that I'm hoping we get to talk about. But you went in the Marines and you got out. What's next? Keep that story going for us.
Oh, well, if that was a long introduction, sorry. No, so yeah, I got out in 96. I got out on a school cut. I don't know if they were doing that still, but there was one of the guys that was a Desert Storm guy, salty corporal, that I was just observing his process as he was going through the discharge process, and he kept talking about, I'm getting out early on a school cut. It was one of these, those guys, they went on that deployment. 3-1 was and this is a little factoid for you, if you didn't know this, 3-1 was the very last unit to return from Desert Storm out of the whole IMF. So the rest of the division was back on Camp Pendleton by May. Okay, the ground war ended, and they pretty much brought everybody back pretty quickly. And 3-1 was on a scheduled Westpac, and they ended up, they were on ship for 9 months. They didn't get back to California until September of 91, right? So they were like the very last unit to come back from that deployment. Everybody was already over the ticker tape parade phase, and so all those salty guys were just like short-timer attitudes were, pretty bad. I think morale was pretty bad in a lot of the division units with the salty guys and stuff. But this one guy, man, he was getting out on a school cut, and he was adamant about it. So I was kind of watching what he was doing and kind of put that in the back of my head. Okay, when it gets time, when you're about a year out, 9 months out, you start that paper trail. And so I did that and got out in August. What is today's date? Got out August 15th of 96, which was about a 3-month early cut, and started going to junior college, and then just stepping stone, work my way up and stuff. Long road. The transition period, I mean, if this podcast has anything, if there's something to come of these podcasts, it's about bringing people together from all the different eras.
Yeah.
Making the current guys that are still in the unit, because the way social media works, you can get on there and mix it up with guys that are still on active duty that you don't even know, and they're just as relevant as you are. Right. And here's the big lesson from Sergeant Cole is make these kids that are about to get out, that they know everything, they're salty, they're short-timers, they don't want to hear jack shit from anybody, and they go in that tamp debrief stuff, and they gaff it off, they don't listen, they're sleeping, they're salty, they just don't give a shit. And then they get out in the world, and things are better now because of the social media and because of the like this. When I got out, you were thrown to the lions. You didn't see or hear, or if you didn't have a phone number written down of somebody's mama's house, you probably were not going to be able to get a hold of Corporal Smitty. You know what I'm saying?
There weren't cell phones now that you could afford.
Yeah.
Just
I
pay
mean,
phones.
Like this big, right?
We bought a cell phone. It's funny you say that. We bought a cell phone. There were 4 of us. And we shared this cell phone, and it was not cheap, and it didn't work anywhere. Like, we would have to go 10 miles off base, pull over on the side of I-5 up on an overpass, and look around and like, is this high ground enough to get a fucking signal? Just to try to call your girlfriend who's out on a date with somebody else on a Saturday night,
Build an antenna out of radio wire.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's just, anyway, that's the way it was.
So tell me, so then let's move back a little bit to the Marine Corps, because I think a lot of the times people talking about the transition, especially finding that camaraderie again, I think some people feel like their service was different than the others. Josh and I have talked about this before, being shoulder to shoulder with some of the George Company guys from the Chosen Reservoir, or Bill Darling. I mentioned him, I think, every podcast. From Guadalcanal, like those are incredible Marines. And so to compare your service sometimes is natural and difficult, but I hear a lot of commonalities and the things that you're talking about. So can you talk a little bit about your deployments? You talked about the Westpac. I know, and before we recorded, we were talking about the LA riots. Y'all did some pretty, I think, unique things during your time that other Marines didn't get to do. So can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah, okay. So like I mentioned before, I had just checked in to 3-1 in like March of 92 after leaving that combat skills unit. So I checked in, and I got to miss, I didn't have that boot check-in to the grunt experience, where I came with a herd of others and was singled out immediately for like, we're going to fucking ruin your day today. That didn't happen to me because I'd been in for 8 or 9 months. I was already a Lance Corporal. I checked in the unit in a government vehicle. So like, who the fuck is this guy? I'm driving a white, Marine Corps truck, moving all my shit in, and so I didn't really get messed with too much. And the unit was coming back off leave and FAP and all this. The battalion was asleep basically when I got there. Like they were just starting to wake everybody up. Like, okay, we're about to start this training cycle again. So they're just starting to get all these NCOs back off of FAPs and stuff like that. You know what that is? Where guys are,
you just slipped in there, didn't you?
So I just slipped in, yeah. And so we were living in squad bays, at Horno, the same. So, if you've been to, it's been like this the last couple of years now. So they used to move the battalion headquarters buildings around, okay? Mm-hmm. But they don't do that anymore. Like the way it is right now, where that 3-1 headquarters is right now.
Yep.
It's been in that building for a long time now, and that was the 3-1 building when I was there. But what would happen is you'd go on deployment, that whole building would be cleared out, and then the headquarters building and your new barracks, when you came back from float, you would be in a different place. Yeah. And then they finally started keeping it permanent. So anyway, same headquarters building, those old squad bays right there by the 3-1 headquarters, right there on the grinder. That's where we lived, right there on the corner, man. Yeah.
Yep, that's where I checked in, man. That's where I went. It was right into those things, into the holding pattern before they sent us off to the unit or
that was the Lima Company squad bays right there. And so I checked in right there, and about a month into it, we were on air contingency battalion where they were doing sea-bag fucking inspections every, 5 times a day, and, just the normal contingency deal. The thing about the 90s, which is pretty cool, is that really from the 80s to the 90s, there might not have been World War III going on, but it was, the Marine Corps was really stripped down to the essence of the Marine Corps, which was expeditionary forces in readiness. That was the essential core mission of the Marine Corps. So it was all these battalion landing teams, stick them on a ship, send them wherever they go. You never know where you're going to get sent. It might be Beirut or Panama or, whatever, right? It was kind of a random deal. Everybody was kind of on edge because you never know what's going to happen in the world. The Cold War thing was, shifting into this instability at the end of the, 80s and stuff. It's kind of an interesting period, So we're doing that air contingency deal. And right when it was ending, this is when that Rodney King trial was wrapping up.
Yeah.
Y'all remember that?
I think I was in the 5th grade.
So, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, I was 20 years old. I guess that's right. I think I was 20. And so, as the trial was wrapping up, and the TV would be on in the squad bay and in the little quarterdeck area, little busted ass TV that, maybe got 2 channels and it'd be on the news. And I swear to God, there were 2 or 3 of these guys, the NCOs and stuff, that were like, we're fucking watch. They're going to send us up there to this bullshit. And I wasn't really paying attention to that at the time. But it was a Thursday night. I will never forget this shit. I didn't have a car. I should have taken the bus, but
Cruiser.
I should have. The 305, man.
305, man.
It was the 305 back in the day. I should have just taken the bus and gone out to town and got my uniform because we had to have a regimental formation and it was in Charlie's, and I was back in the day when I could take, pin a tail on a donkey and stick my national defense ribbon on my, on the uniform. And all the Gulf War guys with their little bricks and, all the little war stories, there's lots of dick measurement contests back then, the 1-5 guys that had transferred in, arguing with the 3-1 guys who had done this, and you weren't in the oil fires. Well, we were over here. Everybody had their war stories. They're always arguing and shit. So, but we had this formation Friday morning, but I didn't listen to myself. I rode out in town with this salty guy. He gets me in this bar. He knows the bouncer. He's like, "Come on, man, I'll get you. I'm not even 21 yet." So I go in this bar, and I'm like, we don't have anything to do in the morning, but stand in this formation, get turned loose on a 96. So, fuck it. We're hammering it hard, in this bar. He's dancing with girls the whole night. He's one of those guys that right out of boot camp. He's got the big cowboy buckle and the big hat and
10-gallon hat.
And it's always somebody that's not even from somewhere that's like traditionally, like, where are you from? And Detroit or some shit, You know what I mean?
Illinois.
He fit the mold, but he was a redneck from hell, So anyway, we pass out I literally passed out in a vehicle while he was in some apartment with some chick, and he jumps in the truck the next morning. We haul ass on to Camp Pendleton. We're about to be UA for this formation, for the first morning formation, lights up because we live in a squad bay,
Classic.
Yeah. So, dude, anyway, we stand in that formation. The regimental commander sends us, he goes around the whole battalion, 1-1, you guys are doing this, great job. 1-9 was, they had just returned from this and outstanding job and all that kind of deal. 1-4 was the other battalion in the regiment at the time. So it was 1-1, 1-9, 1-4, and 3-1. That made up the 1st Marine Regiment.
Yeah.
Just bastard children, And so they marched us to the armory. We're like, what did he just say? I had a ridiculous hangover. They changed us over. We already packed on air alert anyway. So they bring in school buses and shit, and we change over. They shut down I-5. We pull out of Pendleton in a massive convoy of vehicles. And I think when the word spread across the base that they were sending Marines up to L.A., anybody with any kind of command authority was trying to get their unit involved in it too,
Oh yeah, trying to get on that program.
Everybody was wanting a part of that shit. Everybody's already like, are we going to get a presidential unit citation and a humanitarian service medal? And what are we, can we get the combat action ribbon out of this? Just glory, glory chasing big time.
Only if you smoke some Bloods and Crips, I guess. In the
that's kind of stuff that there was a couple of incidents. Anyway, I'll fast forward. We get to the air station. It was an old Marine air base there at Tustin. This is right before they started shutting a lot of those air bases down, like El Toro, and I don't know if you've heard those places, but there was some pretty famous Marine air bases all in that area. Harriers, and I don't know why it was that way, but there were 2 or 3 Marine Corps air stations that were spread all around in kind of Orange County, LA area, and but anyway, they took us up to Tustin, stuck us in this old blimp hangar, like a World War II solid wooden blimp hangar, and I was a saw gunner, and they right before they stuck us on 5 tons, they took the saws away from all of the saw gunners and made us go over, pile them in a big pile, sign for an M16. So they give me an M16 that I didn't even, it's not mine. I didn't have BZO on it or anything.
No, you are not taking automatic weapons to LA.
Yeah, there you go. I'm like, damn it. No, but so we get up into Compton. Well, as we jump up on the interstate going into LA, I mean, you could actually see smoke and from the fires and shit. It was pretty tripped out. So when we finally kind of broke off, the convoys were like going from one big convoy, basically taking their exits to where they needed to go. They took us. There's a couple of good photos I've seen, like AP photos. I didn't have a camera. I wish I had taken a camera. But they took us to the National Guard Armory right there in Compton. So there's a clusterfuck, the whole battalion sitting there in 5 tons in the heat, in broad, like if this was a war zone, just kill the whole battalion right now. Just come in and wipe them out. They're all sitting right there, Just total clusterfuck, Kids coming up to us with fruit and people bringing us sodas and drinks and stuff like that. And there's always the Marines that are trying to get girls' phone numbers and all this kind of shit.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, when we were still in the buses going up the freeway, people were holding signs up. Cars were driving right next to us. Go and kick their ass, and showing us,
signs and stuff,
writing things on paper and like holding it up. Yeah, that kind of deal. It was none of this. Text me. Hit me up on Instagram. But, so we got into Compton, and we ended up being at the Compton Fashion Center. This indoor flea market deal. We were there for like 10 days or 10 or 12 days. Couple of the days, depending on the threat briefings that we were getting. I mean, we were, fixed bayonets and all kinds of shit.
Were you guys just defending businesses and stuff? Because that's what I can recall from the footage of it. Like the Asian business owners getting their rifles and firing back
exactly
at the.
Right. So
we were firing back at the gangbangers that were trying to loot their stores. And how did you guys play into that? So
this place was a Korean-owned, it's like a strip mall. It's funny you say that too. So the elders, these Korean elders, they were there the whole time. Like they were there inside the building.
Defend their business.
Defend
their property.
But none of them were armed. That was unauthorized, like not around us, And see, to back up briefly, I hate to be rambling like this, but the National Guard had been called up first. They didn't really get it done. They got sent out of there.
Not surprised.
And then we came in there. So we never saw any National Guard. Like literally when we got to the positions at that building, they had already loaded their vehicles. They literally pointed at a wall, showed us where impacts were on the wall where they'd been shooting at them. Got shot at from those apartments over there the other day, and they like jumped in their 5 tons and burned rubber to get out of there. And we were like, what? we were unloading crates of ammo, and
Nasty guard. Nasty.
We took over this food court area that had a 3-foot wall around it, and that was our platoon area, and you could kind of sit down behind the wall, and lots of jackassery going on, doing 4-hour rotating shifts between react and being on guard. I know y'all get all that. So, but the Korean-owned guy, these Korean elders, at one point the old man shows up and he's in a Korean Army officer uniform, South Korean Army officer, like a major or some shit.
Yeah.
And he came in and tried to get involved in the squad leader briefing, in the building. And he was right there, and our lieutenant, was kick ass. And I have to say that we had we really did have great officers back in the day. I mean, you guys know, y'all had some legends.
Who was lieutenant?
This guy his name was,
sorry to put you on the spot.
John Mackey. I think he retired as a colonel or lieutenant colonel or something like that. John Mackey. He ended up being our exo in Somalia and stuff, but he was my platoon commander, and he very tactfully moved this man out of the briefing, and But when they see that we were there, they showed up one of the first mornings that we woke up in Compton. And they were feeding us like kings. They were going and getting, we would go inside the building where the air conditioner was, and they have just ice chests everywhere full of every fucking fast food you can think of. McDonald's and Burger King breakfast and McDonald's breakfast and Subway sandwiches. And we were spoiled instantly. We didn't eat but maybe one MRE the whole time we were there.
Yeah.
But the day they found out we were leaving the next day, they cut the food off.
They were like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, we were already spoiled. Where's the food, But so we were there 10 days. Almost everything around us had already been burned to the ground. It was, shit was smoldering, and cars were upside down, and it was a trip. But
yeah, it's an interesting mission because a lot of Americans don't realize that the Marine Corps can be deployed like the National Guard. And when you tell them that, they raise their eyebrows and go, "Are you sure about that?" Say, "Yeah, actually, yes." So, I met a guy, Jason Wood, here in Portland, and he was with you guys and told me some stories. And I said, even when I was at 3-1, I heard rumors of stories of 3-1 and the LA riots and some things that happened.
I'll tell you another one here's some of the rumors, and I wrote about some of this stuff. I actually may have written about all this, but I didn't witness all of these things. But so I was in 1st Platoon. 2nd Platoon Lima Company was, they get put in charge of protecting a Kmart, okay? And they're inside this Kmart just ransacking this place, right? This is stuff that, this is the stuff that the Marine Corps doesn't want you talking about, right? But they're kids in a candy store. They're playing with the toys in the toy aisle, and they're sleeping in the lawn chairs in the lawn area. And some of these guys apparently had gotten into the little restaurant inside the Kmart and got into the freezer and were fucking frying up burgers and just helping themselves to this place. And we're stuck over here at the but. So in one of the big stories, and we heard it coming over the radio after it happened, but, we were coordinated pretty closely with the LA County Sheriffs and the LAPD. They were all over the place. They were constantly coming to our positions and stuff, and probably more, it was kind of like coming to see us like we were an exhibit at a zoo, these different law enforcement had come in and just to look at the Marines, they're like, what the fuck are the Marines doing here? I swear to God. But,
you guys can't do your job, so we're here to help.
Jackson came through in a convoy of limos. Jesse Jackson, I'll never forget that. I wrote about that. Kind of came through and, rolled the window down just a little bit as if he's, going to make sure we know he's there to kind of, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. And but these gangbangers, man, they drive by. the first couple of days, and we were right on I can't remember, Crenshaw, one of the main drags right through that area in Compton. I think it was Crenshaw, and these dudes would drive by the first few days, and I mean they were holding AKs up so we could see them. They would throw 7.62 rounds out on the sidewalk at your feet and keep driving. We're gonna kill a motherfucker tonight, like for real. And the Marines were like, we had no cover for one. Like we were on the sidewalk. We were, like we had fortified sandbag bunkers everywhere.
Did you guys just have like a mag, a 30-round mag, or?
Yes, exactly. They were they micromanaged that bad. Right when they put us on the 5 tons, after taking the saws, they get us on 5 tons, and right before they pull out, they stop the whole convoy, make everybody turn their ammo back in magazines. They recounted it, I guess, and then redistributed these magazines. So, you had your good magazines filled that you took care of, you did maintenance on these magazines, they're good to go. And then when they come back, you'd be like, this busted ass shit is this, like different magazines for your weapon. It was a clusterfuck. Our battalion commander, and I don't remember his name, but I mean, you could look it up at some point. I don't remember his name, Heidelberg or something to that effect. He got relieved, okay? And this ain't, when there's a change of command ceremony, everybody's got to get dressed and go. But when there's a relief, you don't, Lance Corporal Smith is not getting the memo, Yeah. So we literally were in a battalion formation, and they brought the new guy out. And everybody was like, what? The sign had already been changed out in front of the building. I mean, they relieved this guy for, when we left, there were people, smoke grenades and stuff. People were throwing smoke grenades in dumpsters. I didn't see this. We were hearing stories about jackass kind of stuff that was happening, some of the Marines got left when the convoys were leaving. They got left in some of these positions. I don't know how that happened. But it was just a really goat rope. Lima Company was squared away. We were always, our NCOs were always in our ass, and we did our thing, but we were hearing all these stories. Like Kilo Company, the rumor was that Kilo, one of the platoons at a checkpoint, they witnessed a high-speed chase of some kind where the police are coming after some guys, and these guys get out of the car and they run in a house, and the police come by and they said, cover us, because they were about to go in this house.
This is what Jason Wood told me. It's consistent so far.
So when they said cover us, these Marines immediately fucking lit this house up. Like they lit it up. A couple of hundred rounds out of M16s into this house,
Cover me doesn't mean the same thing to Marines.
That was not what they asked them to do. So when we hear about this, we're like, But yeah, that was the story that the cover us story,
Yeah, that's what I was told. Exactly.
We finally got pulled out of there. The riot was over, and then I'll tell you this is kind of cool. It's kind of funny, but we get back to the squad base, and they're telling us there's some boots. There's some new Marines there. And my first thought was, holy shit, there's going to be a new guy. I was the new guy, right? I'm like, there's going to be some boots to me that show up. And so we get back to the squad base, and there's this guy in the top rack of one of the bunk beds, and they basically just assault this guy. Pull him out of the rack, start giving him the immediate, like, who are you, and all this shit. And he's a white dude. He's from, St. Louis area, but he's very much hip hop, hat on backwards, gold chains. This is the early 90s when cultures were just starting to merge like this,
NWA, man.
He looked like I'm like, he was like an early version of, a Kid Rock kind of guy, right? Before Kid Rock. So he's getting his balls busted bad about that immediately, like minutes after the lights get flipped on in the middle of the night when we come back in the barracks. And there was some other context. There was a lot of racial tension at the time because of the riot and all this. There really was pretty good tension in the unit. And, so our platoon sergeant, swear to God, he immediately makes the boot Marine and one of the mouthier of the brothers. He makes everybody get on their PT gear and he makes us go to the basketball court over there. It's still there. They flip the lights on and he made these dudes play one-on-one basketball.
Shit.
It was insane. He was a new guy, right?
Yeah.
And they made him make it. So all the white guys are cheering for him, and all the black guys are cheering for this guy, and the Mexicans are like, these fuckers. You know how they're just like, screw these guys. It's really funny. So that guy earned his, because he beat the guy. The boot beat the guy.
Yeah.
So he was a senior Marine.
Yeah, he was like an instant legend. But anyway, that was the riot. That was a trip. But
that's great. I want to hear about your book.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big chunk of it.
I'm assuming.
A lot of this stuff is in there. I need to do what I can to, it had been edited ad nauseum.
Is it just a biography about your life in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, it was, and I wrote most of it as an undergrad. It was a big chunk of it was part of, I was able to let it be part of an independent study. It counted towards my bachelor's degree and all this stuff. And
what's the title of it, Chad?
Well, right now it's got a title, but because I haven't done anything with it, it really doesn't matter.
Okay,
so
got
is it a kind of a working progress right now?
I'll tell you this: it's been edited and it's more than finished. I just needed to. What interesting, just to back up, in the 2002-2003 time frame, that was when I was in the heat of the writing and I was finishing the whole thing, and then the Iraq War was starting and like the world was changing. Like
when we were going in,
I'm looking backwards and the world, everything was happening in the Marine Corps. It was like, holy shit, what are we doing here? So I had an agent that liked it and he was real excited about it, and then things were changing so fast that all these other books were getting published. Plus, publishing's changed so much where most of these, and I'm going to take advantage of basically taking it straight to the digital publishing, The days of publishing thousands of books and stacking them in a warehouse and then you eat the cost is, that's kind of over, But yeah.
When you get it published, we could do another podcast where we just dive into all that too.
I appreciate that. But then after the riot, then we went to Okinawa. I was a boot over there. We did the UDP deal, hit Hong Kong and Guam and did all that stuff, and training in the jungle and just the basic stuff. Came back from there. I actually tried to go to, at that time I was a corporal. I took the NDOC to go to 1st Recon Battalion. I was a PMI on a FAP after the Okinawa deployment. I run into a guy I was in high school with, and it's so crazy. He was one of my biggest critics about joining the Marine Corps, and he was 2 years older. He played college football, and what are you doing joining the Marines? This is the dumbest thing you've ever done. It really kind of broke my heart a little bit. I looked up to this guy. Kind of hurt my feelings, right before boot camp and shit. You don't want to hear that, So 2 years and some change or more goes by, and I'm walking down the firing line at the range. I'm a range Nazi, and I see him on the firing line. He's with 1st Recon Battalion. What the fuck are you doing here, dude? He said, yeah, join the Marines, and they had just got back from Somalia.
He wanted to be the best, so.
He was. Yeah, he was a great guy, We're still friends. He's an attorney in Austin if you need a good attorney. But
wow, hopefully I don't.
But yeah, you got to know one.
Don't shoot anybody. You're going to need one.
But yeah, so I took the recon NDOC and passed the NDOC and was trying to get orders cut. 3-1 had to let me go and cut orders and let me go over there. And when I go back to the 3-1, because I'm on a FAP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, same language. I was detached from 3-1 when I took the recon NDOC, and so I had to go back to Horno and go to the career planner and say, hey, I passed the NDOC. I need to put in orders. And he looked at me. He was a short timer guy. He's a sergeant. He was like, give me one of these. Like, you got orders here. You're going to Yokosuka, Japan. You're going to security forces duty. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I actually fought those orders. I actually denied those orders You know,
Oh, wow.
you can actually do that. Did you know that?
No, I didn't even know you could do that.
I mean,
I know that you can submit a request.
No, I did.
Which can get denied or approved.
I fought tooth and nail, and I had people fighting for me. Yeah.
I had some orders denied myself.
And I mean, it's not like I just said no, but yes, I made it very clear to everyone in my chain of command that I did not want to go to security forces. And back in the day, it was 3 years on station or 2 deployments before they'd send you to like a B billet, right? It's the same kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so technically, I'd already been there 3 years because I'd been with that group unit for 8-9 months before, and I had only done 1 deployment. I'm like, I'm not leaving the grunts. I'm staying in the grunts. I'm not trying to do 20 years. And they're like, well, basically, if you're staying, they weren't going to fight for me to stay in the Victor unit if I was just going to try to leave and go to recon. That's what they tell me. Like, we can fight for this, but you guys stay in First Marines. You're not.
So leaving. When did you get out, Chad?
I got out in August of '96.
And Josh, when did you go in?
I went in January of '99. Actually, that's when I went to boot camp. But I got into 3-1 in April of '99. Yeah, so I was there, not too many years after you had left. Horner was still the same. We would do 2 deployments. Most guys did, but during that time we would do like training exercises like CACs.
Right.
Did you guys do CACs?
Yeah, I did CACs. Actually, several. I probably did 3 CACs with the group unit I was with, and then but 3-1. We went out and we would do the 400 ranges and do all that. And the first training cycle that I did actually got knocked out of whack because of the riot. Okay. It actually messed up our, back then we would do the McCrest hump and all that. I don't know if you remember all that.
Yeah, we did that.
Part of the whole, checking all those boxes about stuff. But so when I was a boot in 3-1, Lima Company went on a company hump every other Friday. And the battalion humped every other Friday. So Lima Company was on a hump every Friday. This was tradition. We're talking the good 10, 15, 20-mile deal, So when we did the CACs in 29 Palms, for that deployment, we were out there living large at Camp Wilson, doing the whole, life deal. So I got to tell you, this is just funny enough. They tell you when you go out there, don't pick up anything, don't touch anything, don't touch any ordnance, don't pick up any ammunition. I know you know all this. It's the same deal. They give you the story of the Marine who got lost and he wandered off and he died, like right next to the highway. All those warnings that they tell you. Okay, so we're on the fort.
Don't forget the desert tortoise.
Yeah, don't touch the turtles. Don't call for fire on the on the whooping crane. But so we are on the 400 series, and I'm a saw gunner, like I'm saying. We're out there, and I'm seeing all this saw ammunition everywhere, and it's like shit that got dropped yesterday. Like it's still shiny. It's like who's pitching all this ammo? So I was picking up ammo, because when I got to the limit of advance, I was gonna go to town. Okay, so I was picking up all these little belts of ammo and all this, and it was pretty heavy. You know the deal. You're carrying all your shit. So we get up there. We get all the way up to the freaking limit of advance. We're fixing to do the thing. We had Cobras shooting rockets, and it's all whoop-de-doo, And then they call ceasefire before we could really even start going to town. Shift fire and then cease. But they just ceased fire. And they're pulling us off the range. I think there'd been an incident or something where they had to go, the ranges went cold. You know how they would, something happened 2 ranges over. They're just going to call ceasefire across the whole thing, right? So the sun is going down.
Across.
Yeah, there you go. So we're humping off, and I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I start pitching all this extra ammo, And I'm in the back of the platoon. I mean, we're in a column of twos, hauling ass. I'm in the back. I'm a boot, you know. And my platoon sergeant sees the silhouette of like shit flying like this. And when we get up to where the platoon stopped, he immediately gets me. And what were you doing? I said, I was getting rid of ammo that I, you know. Is that what you're not supposed to? I'm like, no, this is ammo that I picked up. Yeah, exactly. You know. So so he sticks me in the back of this Humvee with another guy, and they had no idea. I thought they were going to take us off and kill us. I had no idea what they were fixing to do with us. And they drove us way out in the middle of nowhere, like an hour ride in the back of this Humvee, drop us off in the middle of the night with a couple of water cans, a Prick 77 with some extra batteries, a case of MREs, and they tell us, do not let any vehicles come down this road. We didn't even know where we were. Then the sun comes up the next morning, and we are on one of the ranges for the fighter planes that come out and drop bombs and stuff. And they had told us, you know, we're the road guards on this range. So we're watching these F-18s and shit come over, you know. And we're like, this is just not, certainly probably not OSHA compliant, or, you know, I'm going to call my congressman. No. But so they had us guarding this road for like 3 days, dude. And we sat out there in just blistering heat, you know. This was punishment for picking up safe rounds, you know. But, yeah, so when you ask me, did I do CACs? I did CACs for sure. You know, jackrabbits, you see the big jackrabbits running around, and you're,
You got a good memory, man. What I remember from CACs is hanging out in the A-frames or drinking at the Warriors Club.
Mm-hmm. I always loved, we can go to the Warriors Club now, 2 beer minimum.
Yeah,
I'll meet you.
Club, get drunk, and then get in a fight with the neighboring battalion. That's
go their guide on, go get some wrestling.
Man, back in the day, there was such an intense rivalry within the battalion too, like
fighting the companies. Yeah.
Oh my God, Lima Company and India Company were always, you know, across the parade deck. You know, they lived in the barracks across the parade deck from us, and we were always, you know,
that's how it was when we were there.
Yelling at them. They'd have their ropes hanging off the barracks, and there was lots of harassment. But yeah, so yeah, we did CACs, and then did the Somalia deal, and that was the final, you know, deployment for me.
Let me tell you this. Like, I really, honestly, I want to see more about this book. I want to, especially as you start to publish it and finish it, I really want to get that book out there, because I think these stories are pretty amazing. I think Josh and Russell would agree with me that this generation that you're talking about, especially the LA riot, is something that we hear about, but we don't really hear the stories about it. We hear a lot of stories from Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, Vietnam, World War II, Korea, and those are great stories, but I think these stories are necessary too.
Well, and you just made me, I just remembered a couple of things that I didn't have anything planned to tell you, but some of this stuff is a little more important than just, you know, jackass telling stories, but like to make some of these connections real, the bridges between the people, because that's what makes the whole thing like a fraternity, and makes, you know, say what you will, I know that the guys that I trained and the guys that I took on float, I know what they say about me because I know how I laid it out there. Does that make sense? You've got that confidence that, you know, I trained that guy, and that guy trained that guy, and that guy's the one that trained your ass. Like, those traditions carry forward so much more than we all will ever realize. But I'll tell you this, so you guys, apparently, y'all had, I guess he was a Sergeant Major O'Laughlin.
Yeah.
Sergeant
Major. He was first Sergeant O'Laughlin for us.
Okay, so he was a Sergeant
Major O'Laughlin.
For punishment.
Yes.
So I don't know if you knew he was
loved by some, hated by others.
Yeah. So he was the platoon sergeant for 2nd platoon, and I was the boot in 1st platoon. I don't know if y'all knew he was with Lima 3-1 a couple of times, I guess. So, and then our company first sergeant was Truscott, who everybody knows. You know, retired Sergeant Major Truscott. I mean, he was a legend then. You know, but I mean that was what was cool about that era was, you know, all the senior staff NCOs, you know, especially first sergeants and up. Most of them were Vietnam vets, and they were hardcore. You know, all the senior officers, or most of the senior officers, were all Vietnam combat vets. You know, you know, not all of them, but a lot of the regimental level, and then certainly the general. I mean, General Christmas was still there when I was in. He's a legend. He was a personal hero. Fought in the battle for Way City. You know, Christmas and the Boomer, Lieutenant General Boomer. He was a freaking legend. If you look those guys up, and our so if you remember the trivia here, but. Halfcock's book, the sniper book, you know, what was One Shot, One Kill, or right, that's the name of that one. So in the book, you flip through the photos, and there's one of the photos of him being awarded, like, you know, he was a marksmanship guy, Marine Rifle Team guy, right? Remember all that? And the general that's like pinning the award on him was Lieutenant General, I think he was Lieutenant General Weed. And his son, or his grandson, was in Lima Company 3rd Platoon. He was the platoon commander for 2nd Platoon. Or that was 3rd Platoon. Our platoon commander in Somalia is a retired lieutenant colonel, and his dad was also Lima 3-1, 2nd Platoon in Vietnam. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. He was, and his war story matters. These are the guys you got to get on here.
What's his name, Chad? Do you know his name?
His name is Bennett Walsh, and I'll get you his information. But listen,
the pressure's on because this is going to be published.
Yeah, I'll totally
get him on here.
I guarantee I'll make that happen. But
just let me know. And go ahead, Russell.
But that guy was.
There's other 3-1 Lima Vietnam vets that are going to be listening to this, and I've connected with some over here in Portland, Oregon, where I live. But just as you're talking, I'm thinking about the uniqueness of 3-1 and the esprit de corps that we have, and a lot of that, I think, of why we're unique and why the brotherhood is so strong and tight in our battalion is because year after year after year, we took that as a very serious commitment to try to give back to those young Marines and let them know that it's something special. And I think that's what's so important about this podcast is that it only goes to strengthen the guys that are there. And they should realize that there's a lot of Marines that went before them who, you know, took that challenge very seriously. And they're there to carry on our legacy, active duty, and then we're here to catch them when they come out.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a really cool lineage that you're talking about that I've experienced as well. I meet people from 3-1 all the time. It's a really small world because I'll meet somebody in 3-1 from Vietnam at the grocery store, right? Just walking around, they'll see the Brahma bull on me and we'll stop and start talking. And I that's my favorite thing about doing this podcast too, Russell, is being able to kind of connect those generations. And at the mini reunion, which is October 11th, 12th, and 13th of this year in Dana Point, California, at the Dana Point Marina Inn. I'm definitely hoping that Josh and I will do a few more podcasts, especially with the Chosen Reservoir guys. Those guys' stories are amazing. Bill Darling, I'm hoping that he'll be there. And we can start getting these histories recorded. I think that's really important. And I hate to stop good conversation, but we need to have this conversation again. I really want to talk more about your writing and hopefully get that book published. And
that was really great, Chad. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. I could certainly keep rambling, but it was a good time. And, you know, I'll try to leave you on this note. Back in the day, you knew who 3-1 was, and this is why it's important. I brought this up earlier before you went live, but this black T-shirt was a point of immense pride in the battalion because we were the ones that had black T-shirts. You understand? Everybody else had a green on green or boots and utes with a green shirt, and but 3-1 was authorized, and we stood out in this black T-shirt for battalion PT or company PT, and so that's why I put my black 3-1 shirt on, because it matters. Like you say, people go out and see that stuff. That old bull. I mean, I've got that. The old 3-1 patch. That this matters. And the cool part, the Vietnam guys will notice, but 3-1 was also the last Marine unit to come back from Vietnam. Did you know that?
And they were one of the first to arrive.
That's right. They were the very last after the pullout, when the division was leaving. So that tradition carried on through Desert Storm, and also Somalia. 3-1 was the last unit to go in and do something in Somalia too. So it's neat to be a part of those traditions. Greatest battalion in the regiment, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
And I know if we get the whiskey going, we'll argue with the rest of the 5th Marines too about whatever,
Yeah.
What 3-1 did in Iraq and Afghanistan is what makes me proud to have even wore the uniform for a day. For a day. That's what I'm proud of, is just be like those guys. I was on a team. I'm a team guy. If I'm on the team, I make the team, just make the team better. So yeah, y'all are kick ass, and I'm privileged to even get a chance to listen.
It's our pleasure, man. We're privileged to be able to talk to you, and we have the same sentiment. I think that's a great thing about the association, is that you can continue being a part of 3-1 and integrated with the family as we continue on accepting new generations. If you're not a member, definitely become a member. $30 once a year. Not a big commitment, but it helps us plan the reunions. It helps us operate as an association. We have awesome gear, like cell phone cases and shirts, and we're getting new stuff every week almost, right? So join, help us bridge this gap. Thank you again, Chad Cole, for speaking with us today. Josh, Russell, you got anything else?
No, I hope to see Chad and his brotherhood at the 3-1 era guys that he served with join us at our next big reunion, or even the mini reunion in between.
What is the big one?
The reunion is October underlined 15th through the 18th of 2020. That's the big reunion that we do every 2 years. You can still come to the mini reunion, which is the 11th through the 13th of October this year. Josh, you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chad, that was a great conversation. I really enjoyed listening to that. I could listen to that all day. Guys that are listening right now, make sure you pass the word about the reunion. Now is the time to start planning to attend. You got to take that serious, because that time's going to come quick, and it's going to be a great reunion, and I want you guys to be a part of that. Don't let it slip by.
Yeah, don't wait to the last minute like some people we know.
Carve out the time, guys. It's totally worth it. It is. It'll recharge your batteries. It's a thing you can use for motivation and a trampoline to catapult yourself forward. So definitely get there.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to talking with you all next time.